Y vamos ya con el siguiente panel aquí en el World Football Summit que no va de otra cosa que la creación de contenido. We're going to talk about the creative content and the creative kings of the industry, trying to know why they choose football in order to create the content. Doesn't really matter the source, doesn't really matter what they are or what they come from. For example, I have a YouTube channel, and I always think about why should I run my YouTube channel, my personal YouTube channel, around football. And I always believe that football moves the world in Europe, in the UK, in Asia, Africa, and in America. And we're going to present you all, we're going to introduce to you to all the people of the industry, that, not only football, but music as well, for example, and these kind of things, that are going to try to explain to us why football moves so many people and so many millions around the world. Estaba comentando ahora mismo que yo tengo un canal de YouTube personal en el cual también hablo de fútbol, al igual que en mi trabajo en ESPN, y siempre le he dado una vuelta al hecho de por qué siempre escogemos el fútbol como motor. Entonces hemos citado aquí en el siguiente panel a mucha gente, no solo de la industria del fútbol, sino que también de la industria de la música, por ejemplo, de cualquier otro tipo de entretenimiento, para que nos expliquen de verdad qué tiene el fútbol que no tienen otras artes, en este caso, que mueve tanta gente y también tanto tráfico. So please welcome Joris, James Kirkham, Victor Knaap, Hans Brouwer, and Mark Alazraki. Big applause for them, please. Oh, yeah. Welcome, Joris. Over to you. I can't wait to see what you talk about.
Thank you. And thank you for coming, or thank you for staying. This is going to be an interesting, exciting session that nobody will want to miss. So. We're here on stage with the kings of content, so to speak, so I think we should show some content before we start talking about content. So we're going to see some content from Copa 90, from MediaMonks, and also hear some content, from MassiveMusic. And then we'll have some content to talk about from Mr. Alazraki. So please roll the video.
In summer 2019, the 8th Women's World Cup was held in France. At Copa 90, we couldn't wait, so we had to ask ourselves, how do you do a Women's World Cup? Start by harnessing the unique relationships you already have with the world's best players and get them to help instigate the most hyped tournament draw in the history of the sport. Commission and create your own art exhibition to highlight the 50 greatest female players of all time, attended by some of the players that were going to light up the tournament that summer. Have your artwork adorn the very walls of the official fan park in Paris itself. And as the tournament begins, become the evolution of a fan park. Create clubhouses in Paris and Lyon as destinations in their own right. Let it be home to over 3,500 visitors from over 30 different countries throughout the tournament. Let it be the epicenter of all the best events in the city. Film festivals, fashion shows, parties, music gigs, art exhibitions, match screenings, nothing is off limits. Make good on your promise to turn the players on the pitch into icons off it by commissioning an illustration from every match to mark the 52 moments that made France 2019. Unite fans from all over the planet through your unrivaled creator network, giving them the platform to react to every moment to show their World Cup from their point of view.
And while you're at it, harness your creator network to help produce a daily World Cup show for FIFA itself, allowing more than 20 million people to share in the Copa fans' experiences.
Decide to take over the airwaves too by creating your own podcast to run for 32 daily episodes during the tournament, telling the most incredible stories from the World Cup.
My dad was killed by the Taliban in Afghanistan. We were smuggled behind trucks to Denmark. Whatever happened made me to the person I am today, and it's fate, I guess.
Invoke the spirit of Paris Fashion Week to turn out your own exclusive clothing lines and merch. Partner with some of the world's biggest brands to create content and shows connecting them with an audience they never could have before. Feature on the BBC, CNN, the New York Times, ITV, The Keep, and numerous other press outlets. Over the course of just 5 weeks across the World Cup, Copa 90 was the #1 publisher of women's football content outside the rights holders, created content that was seen by over 50 million people worldwide, and saw a 49% increase in our fan base's understanding of women's football. All of this whilst throwing ourselves headfirst into the biggest sporting event of 2019 and uniting the football community around the women's game like no one has done before.
And that's how you do a World Cup.
This is the story behind the new sound of the Premier League. As the most viewed football league in the world, research showed that perceptions about the league were positive, but that the human side of the brand needed to come to the forefront. As the sonic branding partner, MassiveMusic were asked to create a sonic identity that reflected and supported this dynamic new brand positioning. MassiveMusic's field recordists went to Premier League grounds and recorded everything from the sounds of the fans, to the studs in the tunnel, through to the clink of the turnstiles. The result? The Premier League's sonic identity. Has it been a success? The sound of the Premier League is now broadcast to over 2 billion viewers. 11 adaptations have been created to support the 11 Premier League production shows. It's played at all 20 Premier League clubs across 380 matches a season. And finally, the Premier League anthem has now been released as a single on all digital music platforms.
That's already 3 very different types of content. Mark, at the very end of the stage, what type of content do you guys produce?
We are the producers of a TV show called Club de Cuervos. It's centered around a soccer team and the fighting for power between 2 brothers, a brother and a sister. It's content in Spanish. It's obviously Netflix worldwide. But it's been a great experience making a fake team, treating it like a real team. So we had the same sponsors that the Mexican national team had. And so, you know, the buses that the people would always see our team, our crew, it was like a real sponsorship of a fake team. So we had Adidas, we changed Under Armour, Adidas, and then we ended up with another company called Charlie, which is a Mexican company that makes shirts for clubs. And it's very fun to see that they say, well, we have so many teams in the Mexican league and this fake team. So they always put us in the same line.
Okay, so anybody can watch Club de Cuervos obviously on Netflix, or watch the trailers on YouTube if you want to see a taste of Club de Cuervos. Did you bring any Club de Cuervos representatives to World Football Summit?
We have our president here.
Perfect. Maybe he's speaking later. No. I wanted to ask you guys to talk a little bit about the role of content today, how we're moving from 90-minute just television broadcasting, one too many broadcasting, to perhaps, now so many different channels, so many different screens. How do you reach people? How do you capture people's minds? How do you win new fans? Each of you plays a role in that. Talk a little bit about your perspective on this.
Yeah, listen, the modern football fan looks nothing like they used to. And that's just exciting. It's really difficult for some people to deal with because they can't speak to them in the same way that they once did. They need to acknowledge the way that they act. So, yeah, the 90-minute product, for starters, is sometimes a problem for a young fan who live in a world of memes and GIFs and on their social streams and having football games digestible like a little blurb in the back of a book. That's a very different kind of era to just sitting there only watching four suits in a studio giving punditry on a game. It's nothing like that. Likewise, football doesn't exist just as one piece of the puzzle anymore. No one's just a football fan. People love football and music and fashion and style and design and gaming. So all of these elements combined make for a far more rich kind of young audience, which brands and marketeers and the likes of all of us need to understand. If you just take gaming, for example, gaming and football are such close bedfellows. So if you're under 30, we think that you've had your entire education in football in gaming. So young people have an encyclopedic knowledge of the game. They're far less tribal. A young fan will tell you about Major League Soccer or LaLiga or Liga 1 just as much as they might the British Premier League if they're English. They will game before the game. They will play as Ronaldo before watching Ronaldo. They understand a world of football born from that kind of gaming vernacular, which is so different. And that introduces other elements like music. My 10-year-old probably has introductions to music through FIFA. That's the music discovery engine born out of football. So the whole thing is a brilliant mess. It's chaos. It's beautifully difficult. Like, a lot of people will struggle because they can't just advertise in the same way and they can't broadcast in the same way. But when you embrace it and understand that, then it's never been more exhilarating to be a part of.
Well, at least it's good to be a content producer in this time. And I think you can see it from the 3 different trailers that we just saw. We are all playing in the game to promote the game of football and the players and the clubs in a good way, but totally on different screens, different methods. So it's a very interesting time, but it's also a very difficult time. And I think all the rules that are set in the 80s, 90s, 2000s are different. So where film was the most dominant factor of telling a beautiful story, an emotional story, but film and the big screen and movie theaters were the best way to tell an emotional story. Where television was most engaging and where you can get around with the family, and where digital was cheap. That's how things are stuck in the marketeer's mind. But because of the shift of audience, it completely changed. And it also means that you have to completely change how you produce content in order to reach your target audience. And not just think inside out like this game is playing at this moment for 90 minutes. But what does my target audience actually want to see? It is how Netflix is built. It's based on data points of people who like an X amount of things, and how do you make sure you make the right piece of content at the right moment, at the right time. And that's a difficult game. You have to get away from how you used to produce things. And I sometimes say, in order to demonstrate that, it's a lot of times the social channels are cut down from the longer form content. And if you're not starting to, it's like cutting your car in half and think you have 2 good bikes. It just doesn't work. You have to see what the data points of Facebook and Google are telling you and create content specifically for those touch points.
And if I may say, I think a lot of people, what I love about when you see MediaMonks' work, they don't just reapply it for a channel and think they're done. So the thing still has to be quality. A young audience will ruthlessly filter you out. If it's crap, they'll get rid of it and they'll move on to the next thing. But if it's good, they'll stay engaged. It doesn't matter about length. I'm pleased we've got Netflix. I'm pleased we've got audio design, because You know, we could produce a show like Derby Days and put it on YouTube, and it's 55 minutes in length. It's way too long, really, for YouTube. But the average watch time is nearly half an hour, a very young audience, because it's good quality. You know, young audiences will watch Sunderland Till I Die on Netflix, or a Boca Juniors documentary translated from Spanish. Like, they still exist because they're brilliant. So it's not just a case of, hey, let's make it 10 seconds, that'll work. It's not that at all.
The major problem in this is that content that's produced for other channels are being cut down into social media, and that you just have to rethink, start customer first, understand what people want to see, and make sure you send the right message at the right time to that. And indeed, you're just telling like a lot of younger people don't want to see long-form content. It's just not true. Mm-hmm. And even on digital touchpoints, and we're busy opening an office in India this last 6 months, and there's 100 million people in the last year that have the first content, consume their first content on their mobile phones, and they're watching long-form content. It's just when your entry point is Facebook, you probably have 2 seconds or 1.7 seconds is the ideal ad form to get you from Facebook into another form of content.
And in India, you can even watch LaLiga on Facebook, right? That's our broadcast partner for LaLiga in India is Facebook. So, Hans, so the audio is something different than video, but what role does audio play in this world of content for you?
Yeah, it's a very good way to, you know, football clubs became content factories, I would almost say. And audio is a lot of times it's very dynamic at the moment. The market is very dynamic because a lot of clubs realize now that with their content spread all over the internet and all over a lot of different touch points, that music is one of the things that you can really make a consistent statement with as a club. Of course, from the offline side, in the stadiums, it has always been anthems, and there has always been, you know, tracks. We talked earlier about the Bob Marley track at Ajax, tracks that went to the stadium because of the fans. You know, they put a lot of chants in, etc. There is a lot of heritage at clubs. But now that the clubs go from offline to online as well, or they have been, but now they really are, they realize that on all the different channels they need consistency. And you know, when you're a brand, and all the clubs are brands, you need consistency, and there's a lot to gain with quite a small effort, I think, when you really think about
that in the world of football for you, is it easy? Are people understanding that automatically, or is it something you have to educate people on to understand? Is it an easy pitch for you?
In a club, you mean?
Yeah, football clubs or
yeah,
leagues?
we just worked on one of the most beautiful clubs in the world, or maybe the, oh sorry guys, but Ajax from Amsterdam, of course, we're from Amsterdam, so. Yeah, we worked we worked for more than a half year, 7 months on that project, and it was beautiful. Ajax is very far in their communication and their content, I think. They have a huge club of people that are working on that, and they are very progressive, and they understood immediately when we talked about music that there could be relevance. And yeah, and now we are almost finished with that job, so I cannot play anything or whatsoever, but we're almost finished, and we're going to load it very carefully, and yeah.
Does Club de Cuervos have a tune?
Excuse me?
Do you have a tune or a sound identity for?
Yeah. From the, I think that what we did was create an audio for the opening credits, and that sort of became the anthem of the club in a way. But yeah, I mean, for us it was all about blurring the lines between fiction and reality, and that's what. So we tried to do as much with as possible, no? So we could have plenty of touch points with the fans of the TV show.
Do you hear the music of your series already in stadiums, or?
No, because the team doesn't exist. But but no. We saw it on short format, memes and stuff like that people were sharing. And when the music came on, everybody knew it was time to binge.
So when you're talking about Club de Cuervos, it's kind of a traditional TV show, but it exists on a new platform. You guys also created a bunch of spin-offs and started to be creative in merchandising and things like that. How does that live otherwise online? How have you built out the content around Club de Cuervos?
Well, basically for us, it's just it was more of an exercise of how to have all of the touch points. So we created short spin-offs as well. We did one called Chava in Russia, and it was the president of the soccer club who goes to Russia. I think it was the Euro or something, and he steals Cristiano Ronaldo's shirt. He gets in a lot of trouble. So we were always, and that was exclusively for YouTube. So we weren't media exclusive. We were trying to open up everything, open that conversation, and we created content. And when it's in Mexico, for example, when there's a World Cup, Mexican teams have a commemorative green jersey, right, for the Mexican soccer team. So we created our Cuervos green jersey, and we were always playing in the same level as soccer clubs, and we were looking for that same kind of relationship with the sponsors or with the viewers.
Well, it makes life more easy if you create your own club. I think the biggest issue that we have as content creators for football is that sometimes I work for Team Messi, other times we work for Adidas, next time we work for a club. Or for a LaLiga, or for another brand that wants to cooperate with our national team. So we're juggling our way through all the right holders. I think one of the biggest jobs that MediaMonks ever touched was together with Fox. We created a documentary where we followed in 9 countries all the young top players. So here we did Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid. We followed a couple of 16, 17-year-olds to the road to their to the national teams. Which was a very interesting long-form content to promote clubs in the US with Fox. And we're going to do the second series of it, but to juggle your way through all these different stakeholders is I think limiting the potential of what can really be done in soccer, in football.
And I think some of that used to be the problem with agencies and marketing agencies who used football, like often they use music, as the badge. They'd badge it with a player, they'd put the music on, and they think they're done. Whereas, as we should know, it's the start. That's where you should begin, and you can tell a brilliant story, or you can follow or bring to life character, whatever it might be. That's never just, you never just bring football into things and assume that's kind of job done from a marketing perspective. I thought it was really interesting as well what we just said there about this notion of, well, you can make your own club. But, you know, remember, that's what's been happening with FIFA. You can go to Real Madrid and buy an Alex Hunter shirt. You know, Adidas's second most engaged advert for their Predator boot was a virtual character, Alex Hunter, holding the boot. Because young audiences don't care. They see no difference. It's just football. They don't see online, offline, virtual, gaming, real. It's just football. So you can afford to blend and mix those narratives, and people will come to you.
I think also, from a marketing standpoint, it's really tough to have a conversation because people are changing clubs. The superstar might be playing in the team one year, and then the next year he might be sold to another team, and you build all of the characteristics or you whatever it is that you do around this player, and then he leaves or he gets drunk in a car crash or something, and everything's fucked after that. You know what I mean? So what I try to concentrate always is on the fans. Those are the guys, the ones who are unconditional. those are the guys who will never leave the club, you know? So for me, from our experience, I think the biggest learning was exactly that, you know, don't talk about the players, talk about the fans.
Is there anything when you guys talk to clients or to people in the industry that makes you cringe? You know, that you go like, that's something that is completely the wrong approach to content. Maybe when you see a pitch or you're asked to participate in a pitch, or maybe when you're talking to others in the media space, where you're like, that's wrong.
With music, there is always a lot of difficulties because there's so much content. And a lot of times there are editors that just put stock music underneath whatever footage, which is, of course, an incredible pity because that stock footage might be a choice from the editor who likes that kind of music, but it has nothing to do with the club or the players or the content. And so that is to think about, and then, of course, I'm talking about music again. To think smartly and strategically about that is, of course, a smart thing to do.
It's so often that you will see a brief, often from the media agency who maybe, frankly, aren't working hard enough at that point. The brief will be paper thin because they will just be talking about maybe two levels of fandom, a super fan or an armchair fan. Neither exist. A fan of football is beautifully complicated, incredibly deep. There's so many different aspects, from the cathartic nature of what 90 minutes is, or an escape from normal life, to the notion of ritual and loyalty and maybe taking your children on the same route they used to go, to the feeling of expression and celebration. There's so many facets of fandom that can be addressed, which used to be just in a really flimsy kind of media brief of this is a super fan. Even the old way of advertising of 50 years ago of everyone kind of chinking their glasses together, arm in arm. UEFA statistics themselves, 2 years ago I think it was, say only 20% of people watch Champions League amongst others. In other words, 8 out of 10 people basically are watching alone. Now, no one's alone because we've all got a phone, but how that connects with the world around us is actually the brief, not the idea that we're always arm in arm kind of having fun, because that just isn't the case with a lot of football.
Yeah, and then once you identify that, so first of all, I think that the data of a lot of clubs need to be updated. It's not just fans are not just fans, but there's secondary and a third and a fourth layer of data around that, because you also drive a certain kind of car and you also visit a certain kind of countries. And if once you know that, then you get a better persona. And from that better persona, you can make better stories. And sometimes I feel there's so much content being pushed out. And at a certain moment, you're in a loop in your Facebook timeline that just gives you the same kind of stuff. And then you get wear out. So I think with brands, clubs, national teams, broadcasters, all producing content at this moment, that there will be a moment very soon that it needs to be done smarter.
I love that. That's even happening. We did a focus group. We had 17-year-olds. So these are teenagers in our office. And one of them used the phrase, they're trying to escape the algorithm. Yep. He's 17, and that's the way he speaks. And he said he wants different stuff in different places from different people because they're sick of everything looking the same. Which for all of us and half of this lot, what an open invite, what a door open. Come on, make some amazing stuff, impress us.
It seems that the algorithm is wrong then, you know, if you're getting stuff you don't like. So somebody hasn't figured out the right algorithm. So on the data topic, data being super important, this industry of, you know, sports, football, how far are we into that now, do you think? What do you guys see?
From a media perspective?
Yeah.
I think that it is, I think some of the clubs do it well, some of the brands do it well, some of the players do it well, but nobody makes the connection. So they're all building up their own data stack. And there's always like, we both come from pure advertising, and we happen to stumble into the world of football. And they're struggling with the same thing. It's the data stacks of Google, Facebook versus what do you build up yourself. But especially with all those different rights difficulties, there's no fuel on the customer. And last thing is data doesn't make a good story yet. So it's just the basic that you need to have to then tell the right story at the right platform.
Is there anything you guys see anybody do out there right now that is maybe not your own work, but that you really admire, like that you're kind of envious of?
Hans's work.
Hans, you had
it is
Victor's work.
Music is 80% of the experience, that's sometimes said. Unless you don't have video, then it just has a track.
So you kind of wish that you were doing, that you had done the things that Hans is doing. What are some of the things you see out there that you're like, oh, I wish I did that?
I think Full Well 73, the production company, make wicked documentaries, wicked filmic stuff. Stuff like Sunderland Till I Die is brilliant, and I'd love to be making stuff like that. And they obviously did the United. I'm a United fan, so they did that
also
kind of back
on
in the
Netflix,
day.
Sunderland Till I Die.
Yeah, right. But you know, I think loads of even in advertising, even in the more interruptive kind of general advertising, it's quite rare that you see a Nike spot that you don't like. Yeah. Like there's some pretty good stuff still coming out. We've just seen the piece for the Women's World Cup, which swept the board at Cannes Lion. God, I'd love to have done that. Absolutely.
And I'm just jealous of Handel, who composed the Champions League music in 1727. But yeah, that job will never get free. So that's a pity. But
I love the Manchester City, the one that's on Amazon. Yeah. It's a documentary following...
All or Nothing.
All or Nothing, that's the name.
Yes.
All or Nothing. I think that's a brilliant piece of content.
So if we were to give the audience something to walk away with, people are thinking here, the content gods are here to tell us exactly what to do and what not to do. So if you had, a number one lesson to walk away with from this room in terms of what should I start doing when I come back to my office in terms of creating content, generating content, how do I get more appealing content? Should I do more? Should I do less? Should I forget about should I forget about traditional broadcast as content? Should I just go digital? What is the...
don't follow what's gone before. So the first piece of video that everyone saw, the Women's World Cup piece, really that was orchestrated by a woman here called Rebecca Smith, who's our executive director. She was speaking earlier. I think she's speaking again tomorrow. And you'll notice with that, that's not about publishing 4,000 bits of content for the sake of it to obey a Facebook algorithm, or we must get 20 videos up to make us high on YouTube. That's about creating a physical experience and that becoming like a flywheel of content. So all of the exciting social that comes out of it is born from real people on real panels, having real audio discussions or real podcasts. Good digital needs good physical, in my opinion now. And I think if you were going to start pursuing this world of content and be absolutely fantastic at it, I'd be much more about that than worrying about obeying the number of content units you need to stick on a platform.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that so MediaMonks works 50% for brands and maybe 50% in the world of entertainment and football. And what I see, and it's a bit boring, I think the basics are not right yet. So there's a lot of, because football is so engaging in itself, you can get away with murder. So there's a lot of viral videos coming out now for clubs, players that are leaving, players that are coming, all these re-edits. At a certain moment, again, if you're in the loop of social media, it becomes a political campaign. Then you get wear out. So if you don't have your data strategy in order, you can score a hit now with something that is cool. But there will be wear out very, very soon because there's too many people pushing out content at this moment. The brands are very active, and I think we're lucky enough to work with Adidas, for example. So it's done with a lot of passion. We're working with Fox. It's done from genuine interest in the sport and making the players famous in the US. So it's all done with good intention, but at a certain moment, you just reach the maximum of what you can produce. So then you have to produce it smarter. And I haven't seen that happening yet. And also, the last thing that I'm very interested in is voice. I think voice in combination, if you look at what Google Voice at this moment is capable of, I think there can be a very interesting connection between watching the game and a voice application. I haven't seen very good examples from that yet. Unfortunately, it's not only images, although it is still the most important part of telling an important or an emotional story.
Cool. True. I think it's a very interesting time at the moment where clubs should realize, and leagues of course as well, they're incredibly powerful brands that really need to go back to, or need to think really hard about how the content strategy is done. And if you only look at, for example, the Premier League clubs and you compare them with each other and what they do, it's unbelievable how big the differences are. So it's not that difficult, but try to go to the basics and look at what is possible, look at how other clubs do it, because it's not rocket science. And then,
I've seen a lot of clubs outsource their social media as well, and especially in the Middle East and Asia, which I think it should be taken back by the clubs.
I think from a perspective as a takeaway, I think that campaigns, the way that we understand them, are kind of dying, and I think that you have to have, because a campaign is very finite, you know, and it starts and it begins. And I think that what we're shifting towards is a more constant strategy where football is so noble and everybody loves it so much that you can create small pieces of content for a weekday and long pieces of formats for others, but you have to have like a always on mentality, because football gives you the opportunity to engage and to create, to engage through all of these multiple types of content. So I would encourage everybody here to take that into account when they go back to their offices, to think about always on strategies, I guess.
It's terrible. We're all content makers. We're all producers.
Yeah.
And we say go back to strategy.
Yeah.
Maybe not the best outtake of this. Make more stuff.
Make more stuff. And then final thought from you guys. Everybody's also trying to be global. You mentioned Asia. You mentioned like going into other parts of the world. You know, people are trying to figure out how to speak or reach audiences everywhere, especially now that, you know, the world is connected all the time, obviously, right? So what is your recommendation for that? How do you speak to through content, through somebody in India versus through somebody in New York?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a note. I've visited. So we have a large part of our team sits in Asia. I'm starting in India, and we're in the Middle East for a couple of years. I see a lot of clubs who sold the rights of their social media or partnerships with companies, which I don't understand, because if you look at the Netflix model, how Netflix runs their advertising, they say, well, a 25-year-old in the UK that watches House of Cards has as much in common as a 65-year-old who lives in Tokyo. It's the same person because they both watch House of Cards. So we have to look at it from a global perspective. So you can't have another kind of messaging going out in India. It's the same club. It's a brand that you need to capture. The only thing is that you have to localize it to India, for example. So you have to have local creators and people who speak the language. And India is not India. It is actually 16 languages are being used there. So You have to do something with it, but it's an important part of the world, and I think the biggest growth of a lot of, especially European clubs, sits there.
Football is the ultimate common denominator, right? So that's the connective tissue. So we're lucky. That's a good start. After that, you just have to properly immerse yourself and be unbelievably respectful with the country or the region that you're dealing with. You know, in England, there's a lot of snobbish attitude around Chinese football. It's just the money. And it's like, well, it's averaging over 25,000 per game. That's higher than a kind of championship audience in the UK. They're also so technologically kind of advanced. They've been in messaging environments for the last 4 years, like WeChat, where you order your pizza, order your Uber, donate to charity without ever leaving Messenger. And the reason that's important is messaging is now influencing the watching of football for everyone else. People spend more time in dark social than they do on social platforms. We're WhatsApping in groups during a football game. So that influences everything. So you need to be hugely respectful and understanding. And only through brilliant research and data and insight can you genuinely go out there and start putting stuff out there, understanding who it is you're speaking to and why you're getting it to them.
Yeah, and our platforms will move into this kind of ecosystems as well. So if you don't understand how the Chinese populations are dealing with their mobile phones and what's currently happening in India, where Jio gives $1 subscription for limitless data, that is changing the whole game. Unlimited data, yeah. So I would definitely look at that target audience, because we will shift in our media consumption to how the Chinese are currently interacting with their phones and technology.
Any thoughts from?
Yeah, when we talk global and clubs, I think there is also an incredible amount of territory to gain when clubs have players from all the nationalities. And it's been so easy nowadays to communicate on a global level, right? Through the internet, of course, and all kinds of different. So focus more on the players. Like Ajax have one Mexican guy and two Argentinian guys, players. And, build your fan base over there and grow the brand and grow your club in that way as well, And I think there is a lot to gain there as well.
And when you do an audio identity or a sound identity, you think it should be something that appeals globally, or how?
No, it's just a matter of focus and strategy. Again, strategy. Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't realize it, but of course there is a player from Vietnam now in the Eredivisie, in the Dutch league, and all of a sudden there were like 15 Vietnam fans in the stadium in Holland of this tiny club. They love it that player is here. So there is a lot of community to be built.
Mark, any final?
It's along the same lines for us. We casted Argentinian actors, Colombian actresses, Brazilian player, Spanish team representative. So we created sort of that same feeling, as you were saying, for our soccer club, so that we could tell people in Argentina there's an Argentinian actor. There's people from and what we're seeing in Latin America is that we all speak the same language, and we're finally starting to work together. And Argentinians are working in Mexico. Colombians are working in Argentina. Spanish people are coming. Everybody's starting to work together, which is really interesting, and it's a way to go global, I think.
I think the clubs and players need to be better connected, because the power of social media from some of the players is enormously.
And they're doing like, if a Mexican player is playing in Manchester United, like Chicharito, they started promoting in Mexico their Spanish account exclusively for like Mexicans. And you see in the Mexican Independence, Chelsea says to all of our Mexican fans, Happy Independence Day. That kind of thing, it makes us wonder, no? It makes us really, really happy to see that everybody puts attention now to microcosmos.
Yeah, but it increases also the value of players and clubs.
Absolutely.
I think there's a beautiful business case to be made there.
Clubs like LAFC have literally built themselves on that idea. They've got this beautiful cultural reappropriation. They use supporter culture, ultra fan culture from Italian football, from South American football, and they very openly use that within their own stadia, born from the area which it is in part of LA, which is so beautifully diverse and multicultural, and it seeps through the entire brand, and they play off that. They are the anti to LA Galaxy, which is all about Galacticos, and they are kind of born from the streets like that, and they'll continue to play on that, and they'll succeed because of it.
Great. Well, thank you. On that note, we've actually gone over our time. Thank you so much for sitting down with us here, and thank you for listening to the Content Kings.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's been very interesting, and the good thing of all is that if you have any doubt here, you clarify everything. Thanks a lot. Thanks. Bye. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Bye. Okay, 5 minutes and we'll move on to the FIFA. The FIFA Easy, we will have here Emilio García from FIFA with David Albert, journalist from El País. Vamos a tener ahora mismo en el siguiente panel una Q&A de FIFA con Emilio García y también con David Álvarez, periodista del País. Así que nada, 5 minutitos y estamos de vuelta. 5 minutes and we'll be right back. Thank you.